land. You just have to follow and abide by the master's plan. No sense in looking at him with scorn. Without each other we cannot move on. We cannot move on. We cannot. Love is the only way to brighten your day. Don't throw it away. But love some of us use to spite and abuse. It had me confused. Hey, hey, hey. We living in a change world, you must agree. That old time living now become history. People just don't care for nobody. They pushing the crack and coke just to make money. This is the thing that change our society. I'm sure you'll agree with me. You will agree with me. You will agree with me. and unity in the future. We must teach the youth to respect the elders. For if in the future they have to lead, for them to succeed is more love they need. More love they need. More love they need. Love is the man who could understand. And hear the cry of his brother man. The man who would lend a hand when it's needed, to help the weaker ones to proceed. But some of us using love like a shield, and robbing the poor chance to succeed. Becoming a dick walking solid waste. You think of him as a mental case. Everybody have a part to play on this land. You just have to follow and abide by the master's plan. No sense in looking at him with scorn. Without each other we cannot move on. We cannot move on. We cannot move on. Love is the man who could understand. And hear the cry of his brother man. The man who would lend a hand when it's needed, to help the weaker ones to proceed. But some of us using love like a shield, and robbing the poor chance to succeed. More loving we need. We must teach the youth to respect the elders. For if in the future they have to live, stop practice and preach and murder. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Die, 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 die,
Political situation is so complex, who can understand people? Alright. And everyday people expressing different interpretations. Let us analyze just a little more. Our inner thoughts more deeply explore. Personal feelings away, be more objective, I say. Even if it's hard, we still have to try. We have to recognize the conditions that brought us so, then determine which way we want to go. Because the same stick that beat the black dog is the same that will strike the white. So for Grenada I say, we have no choice but to unite. That's right. And let those who dwell among us without sins cast the first stone. Show me a man who has not done wrong. Each one wants to blame his adversary and hide his own faults. But tell me, how long can this game go on? Where is the love, my people? Where is our unity? We have to build a home on trust and integrity. Yeah. We have to elevate our sense of strength and purpose. We have to understand that the Spice Island must come first. Yeah, yeah. Bear in mind that no amount of foreign assistance can ever compensate for our nation's independence. Our road is long and our work is hard, but our united its strength is our greatest reward. The errors we made as we strove to build a nation, do not forget, people. Alright. There were times when we all were proud and times that we all regret, people. Sometimes we acted so insensibly, treated our own brothers carelessly. Politicians criticized, native sons were ostracized, wolves in sheep clothing parading disguise. The evils that were done we contemplate every day, yet the good deeds we quickly hide away.
pledge ourselves to thee. Heads, hearts, and hands in unity to reach our destiny. Ever conscious of the God, being proud of our heritage, may we with faith and courage aspire, build, advance as one people, one family. God bless our nation.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special get-together. I'm Ricardo Keynes Douglas, and I have been invited to host this event, and it gives me great pleasure to be your host. This evening, we are connecting from Grenada, the beautiful Isle of Spice, to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora and beyond. This is brought to you by the New York chapter of the National Democratic Congress in collaboration with members of the diaspora. This evening, we will get to meet and know a little bit more about the new political leader of the National Democratic Congress. We want to welcome you all the Grenadians in the diaspora and friends who are, logged in from continent to continent and multiple time zones from around the world. Thank you for being here and taking the time to be part of all of this. This is also the first in a series of conversations designed for you, the viewer, to meet the new elected political leader for the NDC. and to create an open channel, of discussion and dialogue as we go forward in the future. We will also get a chance to learn more about the political leaders' vision for the governance of Grenada and how that vision affects all of you in the diaspora. Once this party secures such a mandate from citizens like yourself, all will be moving along nicely. And at the end, we will take time, to answer some questions. And I know the winter is creeping in slowly in some of the places at where you are, but I just know that the moment you think of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, it's going to warm you up. So I hope you're all comfortable, relaxed, full of good energy, and ready to be part of a very exciting journey. Brothers and sisters of the diaspora and beyond, it gives me wonderful pleasure to introduce to you the new political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Dickon Mitchell. Welcome, Mr. Mitchell. How are you today?
I am excellent. Thank you, Ricky, for having me. Thank you for agreeing to host this event. And I want to say a special good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, because I believe in some parts of the diaspora it may be morning. And I look forward to the discussion, and I look forward to the discourse with our friends, citizens, well-wishers, and supporters in the diaspora.
Now, you came onto the scene like a shooting star. And for me, as we all know that a shooting star is good energy. Because the moment you see a shooting star, you make a wish, and most wishes are very positive. So that's a very, very good sign. So now that you're on the political scene in the world, a lot of people don't know who Dickon Mitchell is. All of a sudden, there's this guy called Dickon Mitchell. He's a lawyer, blah, 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 blah. And everybody wants to know. We know a little bit about you, your friends and stuff. But the people out there around the world would like to know a little bit more about you. So you can just tell us where you're from, a little bit of your education.
Sure. Dickon Mitchell grew up in St. David, in a small street village known as Diaspora. I grew up in a household that was headed by women, my grandmother, who thankfully is still alive today, my mother, my aunt, my brothers, sisters, and several cousins. We grew up at a time when village life was vibrant, active. We grew up at a time where you were able to walk to school, and I went to the St. David's RC school. Mm-hmm. So I walk to school on mornings, walk back home at lunch for lunch, and then walk back in for the afternoon sessions. The St. David's RC School is located very close to the Bellevue Plain Field or Bellevue Pasture, along with the Bellevue Community Center. So I spent considerable periods of time in the afternoons playing football, playing cricket, engaging in athletics, and just having fun as a young person with my friends, cousins, and colleagues in the neighborhood. So Diaspora in St. David holds a very, very special and dear place in my heart, because that's where I formed my formative years.
Right.
After I moved on to Presentation College for my high school years, I lived for a couple of years in Laborie as well, in St. George's. So I spent quite a bit of time in Laborie, and so Laborie is also a place that's quite fun for me. Presentation College, like every college boy, I think really and truly represented a signal period of my life. Most of my lifelong friends come out of Presentation College, both those who were in class with me and those who were ahead and in some instances behind me. And behind me because after I finished Presentation College, I went to TMR Community College. I did my A-levels there, and then I went back to teach at Presentation Brothers College. And so in teaching, there were some young college students who, in fact, I went to school with, and in 2 years space of time, had the opportunity to come back and teach them. And so they were not just my students, but my colleagues as well. And they also became my friends. And I have some lifelong friends, one of whom is involved in the NDC New York chapter today, as part of that process. And so education, and I highlight this because education has been the hallmark of what has helped to transform my life. Education along with strong family values, and I think crucially, a sense of community, a sense of what the village does in raising myself and many of my cousins, many of my extended family and friends. And so for me, in a true sense, Grenada, the good parts of Grenada is reflected in our education system. It's reflected in our village life, in our community life, because it really does take our village and our communities to raise each of us.
Yeah. You know, if I'm not mistaken, I think you studied economics, right?
Yes. So, you know, when I
I'm
was
just curious from economics to
law.
To law.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say this. One of my favorite subjects in high school in particular was that of history. And in studying history, you, particularly Caribbean history, you recognize that the economy and the plantation economy that we inherited in the Caribbean, essentially was a very unique feature of Caribbean society and Caribbean development. And so I was always curious as to how economics, the study of resources, influence our lives. And so, notwithstanding my love for history, when I did A levels, you know, you always have to choose.
Right.
I think just instinctively, I was always a very good history student, and at the time, history clashed with economics, and so I pursued history formally during the 2-year period when I was at National College. But because I loved economics so much, I actually asked a private tutor after I'd completed my A levels to help me with doing economics at A levels.
Right.
So while teaching at Presentation Brothers College and while studying law, I also pursued getting an A-level in economics because I'm, and even today, I'm still fascinated by how you allocate scarce resources to meet the needs of a society or the needs of a household or a village, as the case might be. So that is really what drove me to pursue studying economics. It's still a subject I'm fascinated with, notwithstanding that I went on to, in fact, pursue law at the University of the West Indies. So in 1998, I left Grenada, went to Cable Campus, University of the West Indies, completed my law degree there, and then I journeyed to Trinidad and Tobago, where I studied. I passed the bar at the Hewarding Law School, and I returned to Grenada in 2002. And since then, until recently, I've been a practicing attorney at law in Grenada.
And a very successful one, too.
Thank you.
Yeah, yes. A true Caribbean man, because you didn't go further in the Caribbean to get your degrees and stuff. That's fantastic. Now, what led you to become politically involved? Was it something that was just milling around in your head, you know, or you just woke up one day and you just had this revelation that something has to be done and I want to be part of it?
No, I think my education and my love for history, my love for economics, meant I always had an interest in politics, in sociology, in the history of our regions. And particularly when you study what I will call the modern history of the Caribbean, it is clear that we've had some remarkable citizens, not just in politics, but in arts, in sports, in culture, who have really stood up to create the Caribbean civilization. And we have to face the reality that our civilization came out of essentially a very dark period, that of slavery, colonization, dehumanization, dependency, an inferiority complex, racism. Yet still, our ancestors fought all of this to forge a Caribbean society based on democracy, freedom, respect for human rights, the respect for private property. And so when you read your history, it sometimes gives you chills because you recognize how much people have sacrificed to give us the life we have today. And so throughout my schooling, I would have been influenced by a number of teachers who really lit that flame in me to recognize that you cannot take the society you live in for granted. And particularly in Grenada's case, when we look at some of our turbulent modern history, you recognize the kinds of sacrifices that persons have made, including sacrificing their lives, so that we could in fact have a better society. So I was always intrigued and interested in public life. But as to what made me get involved directly, I think more and more as I reflected on what was taking place in our society, I think we've gotten to a point where many persons are even afraid to just speak up. They're afraid to voice their opinions. They're afraid to associate, to assemble, and to get involved. And to me, once that is the state of play, it leaves us in a dangerous situation where, in fact, the very things that are crucial to the growth and continued prosperity of a society or democracy is at threat. And so I recognized that I was in a unique position where I felt I could, in fact, get involved, I could make a contribution, and therefore it was important that I not just talk privately or be critical of others, but that in fact you stand up and be counted and to begin that process. And that really was the motivating factor.
Oh, great. Okay, I knew you just joined the NDC, but was it your intention to go for PL, for political leader? Was it?
No, not at all. In fact, when I joined the NDC, I think the sole goal I had was to encourage other persons to join.
Okay.
And I think by me joining, because it was important to lead by example.
Right.
Encouraging persons to join a political party, if you are not joining yourself, seems almost hypocritical, because most people view politics as a risky business. And in some cases, that is what, unfortunately, our society has suggested, that if you get involved in politics, it's a bad thing, it's a dirty thing. And so you recognize the hesitancy and reluctance of well-meaning citizens to get involved. So for me, it was important to lead by example. And I felt that by joining in an open manner,
right,
it will give me the credibility to encourage others to join. And that really was the first goal, to encourage other persons to join the organization, to assist with rebuilding the organization, with building capacity, and with beginning the process of commencing change within the organization. And that was really the motivating factor.
Right. But I mean, there were so many other parties you could have joined. So I was just curious to know, why did you choose the NDC?
Right. I think two reasons. The core values of the NDC matter to me, and that was instrumental. Two, notwithstanding the many challenges the National Democratic Congress had gone through, the fact is the National Democratic Congress, in my view, at the time, represented one of only two real options in terms of national political organizations. And I stress national because you have a lot of other smaller political organizations, which in my view do not have any national relevance or national ambitions. And so I felt it was important that you had to assess which party best reflected your goals, your views, your values, and the National Democratic Congress best represented that. Second, I was clear in my mind that there was an opportunity to begin the process of changing the National Democratic Congress. And I'm not going to apologize for that, because I think we all have to recognize that change is inevitable. Growth particularly is important. And that the National Democratic Congress needed to grow, needed to improve, and needed to change if it was to recapture the imagination and hearts of Grenadians. And so when I joined and when I encouraged others to join, it was partly with that goal in mind. As it relates to the other national political organization, I think the record is clear to see that change is not something that has happened within that organization, certainly over the last 3 or so decades. And so if one was being purely objective and purely analytical, the probability of joining that organization and inspiring change, I think, was next to zero, minus zero. So from that perspective, just being objective, I think it was quite clear that the only choice really was the National Democratic Congress.
Okay, great. No, I mean, we're coming to the segment, but I have to ask you a question. Being an artist and in the performing arts and outside in the diaspora, there are tons of performers out there in Grenada. I'd like to ask you, I want to show you this. Where do you think your vision, I want to know, for the performing arts in Grenada? How is it you think is important for the nation?
Well, I will start with value. The performing arts adds dignity and value to us as human beings. And we can't underestimate that. And so once you're building a civilization, the performing arts ought to be a critical part of that. Right. And we need to understand that for the psyche of our people, for the pride of our people, for the creativity of our people. And that is what we have, our people. And I recall, I don't know if you remember this, but when I was in Cave Hill, the Grenada Association in Barbados had actually invited you to do a play, I think, or spoken word at one of the events they had. And I recall, and I was involved in the association at the time because I was in Cave Hill, and I recall watching you perform and, in a sense, watching you transfix us in the audience. And it really took you away from whatever stress, whatever issues that were plaguing you at the time. And we have to recognize, just from that perspective, the value of the performing arts, the creative arts. But outside of that, we seem not to appreciate the vast economic opportunities that are available to us arising from the performing arts and the creative arts. And I think we therefore have to truly recognize that, expose our people to that, educate our people to that, and to create the policy and the legal framework that would really support the performing arts as a central pillar of our economic activity in Grenada. And regrettably, I think over the last, perhaps in my view, I almost feel 30 years of my life, I certainly felt as a child that the performing arts played a far more crucial role in the fabric and the life of Grenada in all forms: drama, dance, music. I'm certainly growing up in schools, the performing arts seem to have been a far more central part of our lives than it is today. And just starting from there, I think we really have to transform that. And I can give you several examples. We didn't have a carnival during COVID-19 2020. But to me, we lost the opportunity to, in fact, teach the technical aspects of Carnival, songwriting, learning music, playing mass, creating mass, creating costume. We could have used the opportunity, notwithstanding that there was no Carnival, really to begin teaching that process amongst our young persons, costume making. We can go on and on. Teaching the history of our traditional mass, what it means, how do you make it. If we don't do those things, it goes back to this whole question of who we are as a people, what makes us different, how do we distinguish and identify ourselves. And if we don't recognize that the performing arts, perhaps more than anything else, plays that central role in defining us, then we will really not be building the Grenadian, or for that matter, Caribbean civilization that we should be building.
Excellent. I can guarantee the artists and performing arts listening out there, they're going to be very happy. Another thing, we need a national theatre. So I'm just dropping all these little seeds.
Absolutely.
Performers in Grenada.
And that's part of, and that's part of the discourse we need to have, because it's the persons who are most primarily involved in any given sector should really be the ones driving the policy and influencing the policy. The politicians ultimately should be reflecting that which the persons and the people want, not what you have in your own head as a politician. And so as someone who's an icon and a cultural ambassador, it really behoves those who wish to make public policy for us to sit, listen, and hear you, and then implement the things that would really make the difference, because you know what you're talking about, and oftentimes we don't, certainly when it comes to those areas. So I certainly welcome advice, discussions, suggestions with all of our artists, all of our creative people. And I said, not just those who actually perform, but those who are involved in the technical and the production aspect of things as well. Because again, it's an opportunity for us to teach our young persons about careers, non-traditional careers that they may not have thought about, in terms of things like music producing, film, video. The PRO of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Romain, is very passionate about that. And that's one of the things we need to promote, because he's a perfect example of how you can become successful in those areas.
Right. Well, Mr. Political Leader, it's been a pleasure chatting with you, and congratulations once again, and all the best in the future. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Although is we ting. Nobody could copy that. That is we national dish. Grenada's national dish. This one-pot delicacy embodies our heritage, character, friendliness, and joy. Each ingredient brings with it a story of its own.
It's a melange of our tumultuous history, our passion as a people, and the love for a little socialization. Fortunately, no get-together is a good get-together without a pot of oil, and rum.
But that's a story for another time.
At the heart of this dish is breadfruit. Introduced to us by Captain William Bligh, you could find a tree in every backyard.
Along with breadfruit is fig. That's what we call green bananas.
And grown provisions like yams, dashi, and whatnot. No, this is just my opinion, but you can't make oil without meat. Some people do, and that's fine, but you must have some meat in there. Pigtail, chicken, a little salt beef, crab, or wild meat like iguana, or even saltfish.
No, with the saltfish, you have to soak it good, because you don't want to salt the pot. You must also try not to eat out all before you finish prep the other ingredients. That is problems.
Now, the saltfish, originally cod, was meant as a cheap source of food for the slaves. But today, saltfish is Mr. Saltfish. So put some respect on it.
Anyways, dumplings must not be forgotten. Very important. You see, making dumplings is an art. Can't be too hard or too soft. Can't be too big or too small. It can't be too sweet or too salty. It must be just right. All you need is a little flour, salt, and water. That is how we like it. Now, to pack the pot. That is the real skill. You must artfully stack all these ingredients in your pot and cloak it in callaloo. Let it simmer slowly in a bath of coconut milk turmeric, which was introduced to us by South Asian immigrants, curry and other seasonings. Why? Pure perfection.
At Independence time, you can find pots of oil long smoldering on an open fireside in every community. Look out for the savory aroma and people lining by the pot with their bowlie, fig leaf, or plate, whichever is your choice.
This dish is Grenada's fingerprint. Each pot possesses its own unique flavor. You see oil down? That's a Grenadian thing.
In due time, the polls will open and democracy will call on us to make a choice.
A choice between prosperity and false promises.
We all desperately crave change and progress, but progress favors the prepared.
What does it mean to be prepared?
It means to get registered.
Voting is your right, but you can only take part in the process if you are registered.
Registration is the first individual move you have to take if you want to contribute to the collective effort of national transformation.
Registration is how you can ensure your voice is heard.
Registration is a step in the right direction to bring benefits to all people.
To experience meaningful change.
Registration and voting is the only way to actualize our vision.
Our vision of more jobs and opportunities.
Our vision of better health and a robust agricultural sector.
Our vision of prosperity and nation building.
The ink we must use to rewrite our destiny.
To start a new chapter in our nation's history.
Is in the voters' booth.
And only the registered.
And only the registered.
And only the registered have access.
Change begins with registration.
Get registered today.
To get registered, visit your parliamentary electoral office in your constituency. For assistance with registration, call 435-1817 or visit our website at www.bringthevote.com.
Welcome back once again. Here we are with our political leader, Mr. Dickon Mitchell. But also, this evening is also to start a fundraising event, right? So we can get to connect with each other in the diaspora. So right now, I will say farewell to you, and I'm going to bring on the man of the hour who will get you out there to get excited to support the National Democratic Congress and the new political leader. So I say farewell and Merry Christmas.
And good evening to one and all from a Wonderfully sunny Grenada. The sun is just about going down, and we want to bid you, wherever you are, welcome to our life. Now, as George Brizan used to say, one cocoa will fill the basket. Fundraising is a fundamental part of any campaign because campaigns generate significant costs to ensure that every qualified voter is armed with information needed to make an informed choice going into the polls. This requires media campaigns that help to get the party's message out to every eligible voter in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique, and to the wider region and diaspora. This requires significant advertising, printing, mobilization, transportation, office spaces, etc. So the party relies on support from its members, allies, partners, and friends to make this possible. Tonight, our political leader will stress how important the support of people like you are to the success of the National Democratic Congress, and launch its official fundraising campaign, ensuring that people at home and abroad who are actively seeking change in how our beautiful tri-island state is governed and managed going forward can support this effort. By providing resources through fundraising, it brings us closer to seeing the change that we may want by supporting the party of your choice. Throughout this evening's session, information on how you get involved will be displayed on the bottom screen, and I invite you to write it down and share it with friends and colleagues who may have missed tonight's broadcast. The information will remain on screen throughout the duration of the program.
The diaspora. And therefore, for the political organization to in fact function and meet its basic obligations, we are completely reliant on donations, we are completely reliant on fundraising activities, and we are completely reliant on the time, the resources, both material and human, of our citizens and our friends in the diaspora. So from a fundamental basis, in order for the organization to be resourced, we in fact need your help and your assistance in order to do so. Secondly, we really wish to transform the National Democratic Congress into an organization that its members and its membership fund. And this is critical because we want to ensure that the policies of the National Democratic Congress, that the issues that the National Democratic Congress champions are issues that matter to us, the ordinary citizens of Grenada. And it is therefore critical that going forward, we are able to in fact finance our organization through the ordinary membership, the ordinary contributions, and the ordinary donations of our membership. And this is very important because we do not want to risk our political organizations being captured by one or two big donors or one or two unknown persons who may fund the political party and indirectly control its policies, its goals, and the issues that it holds important to it, which may not be those issues that the average Grenadian, both in the diaspora and in Grenada, finds important. And so we really want to be transparent and clear in how we go about raising funds. And that means raising funds through a forum like this, where we appeal to our citizens in the diaspora, we appeal to our friends in the diaspora, we appeal to our associates in the diaspora to help fund the National Democratic Congress. And we are not asking for massive or large donations. Of course, if you're able to do so, we would welcome it. But really the aim is to initiate the process of grassroots funding of our political organization so that our political organization reflects the issues that are important to our citizens. And while this is the first initiative by which we are doing so, we really do hope on a monthly basis to ask citizens in the diaspora, to ask citizens in Grenada, to continue making monthly small contributions to the National Democratic Congress so that we can meet our obligations. There's also another important aspect that I want to highlight. Although we've had political institutions and organizations existing since independence, and in some cases before independence, many of these political organizations concentrate their efforts around elections. And we want to be able to move beyond that. We want to be able to ensure that the political organizations are always active in our communities, always active in our societies, not just at election time. And in order to do so, we need to be able to maintain and staff constituency offices so that these constituency offices become the center point of our engagement with the communities. You know, we have many senior citizens, for example, who don't even have a place to go to on evenings or on weekends to sit on a park, to sit on a bench, to play a game of cards, or to just socialize or have an ice cream. And we want to get to a point where our constituency branch offices are used for those purposes. We have many citizens here who have graciously agreed to, in some cases, underwrite the cost of the constituency offices by discounting the rent. We want to be able to use those areas, not just for politicking or politics, but in fact to be a true part of our communities. So that at Christmas time, our kids can come and engage in social activities, so that our youth can be trained in various aspects of political work, civil work, social work, volunteer work. And in order to do so, we clearly need the resources. And as I said, the point is we want to be transparent in the process. And the best way to be transparent is to ensure that we get small contributions from as many concerned citizens in the diaspora and in Grenada as possible. So I really do want to encourage you to use the link available to, in fact, donate to the National Democratic Congress.
And so, brothers and sisters, you have heard it from our political leader. You must understand how important this is, because democracy must be financed, and it must be financed by the people who will benefit from the democracy. Yes, and that is you, every citizen of Grenada. So to donate, you can go to www.ndcgrenada.org/fundraiser. Let's repeat that. To donate, go to www.ndcgrenada.org/fundraiser. So, diaspora. The diaspora is a word of Greek origin, meaning to sow over or scatter. Over the past decade or so, diaspora has become a term of self-identification among people who have migrated to other places. Some folks might never come back to the country of their birth, but they have retained their emotional, cultural, and spiritual links with their home country. And no matter what, that umbilical cord is never broken. There is a wealth of talent, resources, and skills in the diaspora that are eager to join the mission to serve their country. Successful Grenadians who love their country and who are tired of their contributions being limited to just sending much needed items home. But they are now prepared to step forward and have their voices and votes counted in the movement towards change. The NDC's goal is to build a better nation and lay the infrastructure that will make it easier for returning nationals to be welcomed back. Welcomed back to a country where it's easier to do business, where we have better healthcare systems and provide avenues where skill sets can be shared with the next generation. Very important. And so we come to question time. Pierre, can you elaborate about your thoughts on how important the diaspora is to the country and what role they play in nation building?
Thank you, Randall. Let me start first by, I think, expressing gratitude on my own behalf, on behalf of the National Democratic Congress, to the diaspora for making this event possible, because the idea to host this event in the first place came from the diaspora. And I think that in and of itself is testimony to the value of the diaspora to us in Grenada and to the National Democratic Congress. But I want to identify something that I've observed, and I think it's critical for us to recognize that the relationship between the diaspora and the homeland must be a relationship that is mutually beneficial, both to the homeland and to the diaspora. We in Grenada have benefited over the several decades from the diaspora contributing particularly in material items to Grenada. But I often hear the frustration of the diaspora when they feel, and in many instances rightly so, that they are treated with scant regard, with scant respect, and that their contributions are not valued. And the National Democratic Congress wants to make it clear that under the National Democratic Congress administration, that type of approach, that type of policy will be reversed. Citizens of Grenada are citizens of Grenada regardless of where they live. And we also have to understand that when a citizen of Grenada migrates, oftentimes his sense of identity is more crucial to him than ever before. And therefore, he needs to ensure that he identifies more. And oftentimes, there's a common saying that the further away you are from Grenada, the more patriotic you are, because you then truly appreciate why it is important to have a cultural identity. And so the diaspora, oftentimes, as I said, is perhaps more patriotic, more keen to assist and to help in improving Grenada. And we need to recognize that, we need to appreciate it. And crucially, we need to make sure that our policies in Grenada support that and make it easy and efficient for the diaspora to help, not just by sending money back, not just by sending barrels of stuff back, not just by sending health equipment and health assistance back, but by truly appreciating that our members in the diaspora are living in societies that are far more sophisticated, that are far more complex, and therefore we need to value their experience and their skill set in assisting us in Grenada in meeting the challenges of addressing the complex issues we face in this world. And given our limited size, it's a common joke that there are more Grenadians in New York than there are Grenadians in Grenada. And I say it's a joke, but it's probably true. So we need to recognize that. And I think that's the starting point in truly appreciating the fact that wherever a Grenadian is, he's a Grenadian and he should be treated as such. I then want to highlight the fact that we need to eliminate a lot of the bottlenecks that members of the diaspora face when returning home to help, and to ensure that they are not frustrated and leave and go back and oftentimes wonder why they even offered to help in the first place. Because almost 90% of the time, it is genuinely help. It is not a desire to benefit personally. It is not a desire to show anyone up in Grenada. It's a desire to help. And sometimes it may be cultural clashes because, perhaps in New York, we talk about the New York minute and everything happens at a much faster pace, and you come to Grenada and we are still in island time or island life. And so both sides would need to recognize that we have to acclimatize in those circumstances. But I think truly a lot of the bottlenecks that we place and which prevent the diaspora from truly helping has to be addressed and has to be eliminated as much as possible. But the third aspect that I really think it's important for us to appreciate is the knowledge, the skill set, and the experience and connections that members of the diaspora have, which we need to truly help transform Grenada. And I want to make this point because I think if we examine our political history, we will understand how crucial the diaspora is to Grenada. Sir Eric Matthew Geary came back to Grenada after having lived outside of Grenada. Maurice Bishop, Bernard Code, and many of the leadership of the PRG period came back to Grenada after having lived in Grenada. Our incumbent Prime Minister came back to Grenada after having lived outside of Grenada. And that tells you something. It tells you that the exposure and the experience that you get from living outside of Grenada oftentimes creates the desire in you to lead. It creates and it gives you the experience and the skill set to be able to come back to Grenada to help transform, for better or for worse, Grenada. And that is critical for us to understand, because if we are going to truly grow and develop, we have to be prepared to keep an open mind. We need the exposure. We need the skill set that is required. And from that perspective alone, I think we need to be able to mine the skill sets, the talent, the experience of the diaspora to help us not just materially, but politically as well. This is crucial, and to help us develop our political institutions so that they can bring the sort of stability and growth that we need within the diaspora. Related to that, and I've said this and I'm going to repeat it, given the challenges we have with limited resources in Grenada, I think we can certainly use the diaspora to staff a significant portion of our diplomatic and consular offices throughout the world. I'm not just saying New York or the United States, I'm saying throughout the world, because there are Grenadians living throughout the world who are very successful. And I'm sure would welcome the opportunity to help, and in many cases, underwrite the cost for the state of these consular and diplomatic offices. And so we should really be looking to Grenadians first, rather than non-Grenadians, I think, throughout the world to help us with our diplomatic and consular missions. Because why? They would have that sense of natural patriotism. You're not buying it. You know, they're giving it because they are Grenadians first and foremost. Second, if they are successful, it means they are probably likely to underwrite or be willing to assist in underwriting the cost of those issues, of these offices and the personnel associated with it. And so you don't have to run the risk of people saying that you are appointing conmen or persons of questionable character to hold Grenadian passports and so on, because you are essentially asking Grenadians to do so. And I think just that alone, from a point of view of appreciation, I think will encourage even more Grenadians in the diaspora to be prepared to help and serve Grenada, because it truly reflects that you're looking for genuine partnership. In the area of foreign direct investment, you know, we always talk about how important foreign direct investment is to Grenada. But if we pay careful attention, I think the diaspora is the biggest group when it relates to foreign direct investment in Grenada. It is Grenadians who live overseas who are going to come back and build in Grenada, who are going to be sending monies back to Grenada, who are sending vehicles, clothing. I mean, you could name it. And I think if we pay particular attention and really crunch the numbers on that, we would see that the diaspora as a group is perhaps the single biggest direct foreign investor in Grenada. And therefore, when we are looking to develop Grenada, to me, that is the group we should be looking to first, before we go looking for persons from other parts of the world. And it is only when we exhaust this, and I just say, I don't think we will be able to exhaust it, because there are many, many successful Grenadians throughout the length and breadth of the world. And I think we give them the opportunity to invest in Grenada if we allow them to help us to create the kinds of products that persons can invest in Grenada. I think we would make a significant dent in ensuring that we can grow the pie in Grenada and in ensuring that we can correct some of the structural issues that we have in Grenada. So those are just some of the areas that I think the diaspora can help in. I mean, they're the obvious ones that they've done so traditionally, remittances. You know, to a large extent, I think Grenada has remained a stable society, notwithstanding the high unemployment rates, because persons' lifestyle and livelihood are underwritten in many instances, entire households and perhaps a large percentage of villages by Grenadians who work through thick and thin in New York, in London, in Canada, you know, to assist their cousins, their brothers, their sisters, their parents home. And so it's incumbent upon us who are the benefactors of this to truly be appreciative of it and to truly say thank you to the members of the diaspora. And it's important for us as a government, I think, to also recognize that and to continue policies that would facilitate, for example, the easy remittances, that would facilitate our diaspora members reinvesting in Grenada, and to create and identify projects that the diaspora would be interested in. And I think that is part of the challenge we face here, where we do not, in fact, come with or identify areas or projects that members of the diaspora can help with. And worse yet, when members of the diaspora do identify it, they don't get the support that is required, whether it's support in concessions or support in sometimes just moral support or just public advocacy on their behalf. And I am personally aware, you know, of many instances where members of the diaspora have come back to Grenada and have invested sometimes to the tune of millions of dollars in projects here. And for silly reasons, really, these projects are not as successful as they ought to be. And it pains me, because you recognize that when that happens, you increase the risk that our citizens outside of Grenada may feel discouraged or disenchanted to get involved in Grenada. And so, having witnessed firsthand many of these instances, it's really incumbent upon us as citizens of Grenada, and certainly the National Democratic Congress will lead in that, in ensuring that we truly turn the corner on how we view the diaspora and ensure that the diaspora is an integral part of nation building in Grenada. So, Randall, I know I've said a lot. You know, I hope members of the diaspora would forgive me if I talk too much.
No, but I mean, you have hit the nail on the head. You know, we tend to want to differentiate between our citizens. And so, look, you are a citizen of Grenada, and so entitled to all that Grenada can provide for you and wherever you are. And usually, as you have said, those in the diaspora seem to love the place more than we do.
Yes.
So I want to say, yes, it's really important that you continue, all of you out there viewing, that you continue to support Grenada and what it is we want to do. And so I wanted to remind you about how to donate. Yes? So to donate the funds, go to ndcgrenada.org/fundraiser. On this platform, you can send payments using PayPal or using your credit card. Checks in the USA can be made payable to the NDC New York chapter. That's NDC New York chapter, mailed to P.O. Box 250703, Brooklyn, New York 11225. I will repeat that. Checks in the USA can be made payable to NDC New York chapter, and they can be mailed to P.O. Box 250703, Brooklyn, New York 11225. Checks in Grenada can be made payable to NDC and mailed to P.O. Box 1109, Grand Anse, St. George. Checks in Grenada, make them payable to NDC, mailed to P.O. Box 1109, Grand Anse, St. George. And we really have to continue to stress how important the diaspora is to the country and must never be taken for granted. You are important, and every small gesture towards nation building is of enormous value. And we really appreciate what you continue to do, what you have done in the past, and what you will continue to do in the future for this lovely isle we call home. So the new political leader and his team, family, party is depending very much on you for your support. At this juncture, we'd have some questions from the diaspora. Yes, we have come to the moment where we will open the lines for questions. We will try and keep it nice and tight and to the point, as time is of the essence, and we want to accommodate as many questions as possible. Now, we had a question from we were talking about theater, but I think that was answered already. So we want to move on to, we have had a question come in from Bernadine in Houston. Yes, I'm looking at the prompter here. Texas. So she's in Houston, Texas. Pierre, how would you ensure that women are visibly involved at the highest level in your administration?
So thank you for that question from Houston, Texas, and it's an important question. And I want to answer it in two parts. I think within the party, National Democratic Congress, on being elected as the party leader, one of the immediate goals I've set out is to ensure that each constituency branch in Grenada has a vibrant and active women's arm. And that is critical because we need to ensure that we are able to on a constituency basis, ensure that we get women to come through the organization and to serve at the highest level. And I think that is important. And from that point, we will then be able to move on to ensure that we get women to serve at the highest level in an NDC administration. And that has to be a deliberate policy. It has to be a deliberate policy. Women dominate and lead most of our households. They care for our children. They oftentimes do not bring the level of egotism that men bring to public and political life. And so it is important that, in fact, we have women serving at the highest level. And certainly under an NDC administration led by me, we will ensure that we do so. So as part of the process of creating the change, as part of the process of encouraging persons to get involved in public life, we are also deliberately targeting women in particular, because we recognize that our society cannot grow and develop without having women in policy-making decisions at the highest level.
Yes, indeed. And You know, women really have been playing a very, very important, you know, in every political organization in Grenada, the women are the ones who really get outside there and make things happen, you know, Dickon, from, I mean, you know, Gary's time right up. Yes, and so we must be deliberate about getting them involved in the political process at the highest level. So thank you for that. We have another question from Kwesi in Los Angeles, California. So Kwesi asks, I have a huge student loan to be repaid. I believe I'm good in my field and would love to return home. However, there are no guarantees that I would find employment if I do. Apart from the love of country, what will your administration do to attract persons like me to return and participate in nation building?
Right. So Kwesi, thank you for that question. It's a very important question that I think plagues our society, and how do we address it? And let me say this. Part of the challenge we face in Grenada is the lack of transparency in terms of understanding what are the skill set that we need in Grenada and where we can find that. So Kwesi, I'm not so sure what your expertise is in California, but I think the starting point is we need to build a platform. The PRO of the party reminds me that we live in the information age, and therefore we need to be able to mine data. And that means we need to be able to tell our citizens outside of Grenada what are the areas that we need critical skills in or expertise in that we do not have, and be able to match that with the expertise in the diaspora so that we can then attract the right skill set to fill the vacant positions that we may have home. And that is part of what we must be able to use the technology that is available to us to address. So we need to implement a deliberate policy that will in fact do that, because we have critical shortages of skills in Grenada. And oftentimes they are filled by non-Grenadians, without Grenadians in the diaspora getting an opportunity to realize that there's an opportunity for this to take place. So that's one of the critical things that we need to do. But I would also expand on this as well. Nation building doesn't always involve coming to Grenada to build Grenada. You can build Grenada regardless of where you are. And with the technology that is available to us now, Kwesi may very well be able to contribute to nation building in Grenada without having to come to Grenada physically. You know, so many of us work remotely now, and we should be able to use the skill set of our citizens without requiring them to fly into Grenada physically. So it may very well be, Kwesi, that depending on what your expertise is, that we may be able to allow you to assist us in Grenada or even work in Grenada without you having to fly to Grenada. And again, that would address some of the concerns you have in terms of your student loan and being able to pay that back, because it may even allow you perhaps to do two jobs. Given the time zones that we have between California and Grenada, it may very well be that you may be able to work in Grenada and work in California and allow you to pay off the student loan in double time. So we have to be creative, we have to be innovative, but I think it's crucial for us to start really using information, because we're using the information age to help us with finding the right mixes and matches for the challenges that we face.
Well, thank you very much for that. And we have Michelle in Dallas, Texas. What do you think about the educational system in Grenada? What structure will your administration put in place to bring the educational system in line with the 21st century?
Michelle, thank you for the question. I am to a large extent the product of the education system in Grenada. The challenge I think we currently face is whether the education system is producing more Dickon Mitchells or less. We can't all be lawyers or doctors or the traditional professionals. And in a population of 100,000, in fact, we probably saturated with that sort of traditional professionals. The education system in Grenada needs retooling to, in fact, focus on what I just talked about, the information age. We really need to make a concerted effort to introduce coding, programming, and the necessary digital skill set into our schools. And, you know, deliberate action over the next 5 years could begin that process of transforming our education system in Grenada, even if it means importing in the initial stage the skill set and the expertise to implement those programs. There are places like South Korea in which, you know, at 3 and 4 years old, in addition to English, the next mandatory subject is coding. And I think many of us recognize how South Korea has completely, in a sense, over the last 10 years or so, been responsible for a significant portion of the products that we consume, whether it's the Samsung phones and all the Samsung line of products and so on. Now, you may say this is South Korea, so it can't happen to Grenada. But I beg to differ, because ultimately it's the human resource that is important. So for an NDC administration, if we are going to begin the process of transformation, if we are going to begin the process of putting Grenada on the path to deal with the challenges of the 21st century, it must start with the education system. And those are two areas that I've identified as critical. The creative economy is also another part. And so we need to pay attention. And Ricardo earlier talked about the performing arts. That's another area that we need to ensure that is actually formally taught in our schools, both the technique as well as encouraging our passion, and to be supported both in terms of physical infrastructure and in terms of personnel to help train that aspect. There are other areas that we take for granted, and I've been talking about this a lot. Basic life skills like swimming. You see, education is not just going and sitting in a classroom and having a teacher impart knowledge to you. We need to be able to instill in our children, in our citizens, life skills that will serve them well. You know, I've talked about the importance of swimming because we live on an island. Our territorial waters is 75 times that of our land. And therefore, we have to appreciate that our marine territory is larger and perhaps even more significant and more important to our overall development than even the land on which we live on. So again, having an education system that reflects that and that seeks to exploit that is important. And I always give this example. If you wanted to learn to fish in Grenada, how would you learn to fish? If your family is not a family of fisher folk, to a large extent, you're on your own, you know, because our education system has not viewed something like fishing as something that deserves the kind of attention to allow us to teach people how to fish. And I don't think I need to stress the importance of fishing as an economic activity, fishing as a recreational activity, because we have things like the Billfish tournament, where, you know, persons from throughout the region come, and it's a major activity and a major economic activity in Grenada. So we have to take a practical view of what education is, and it is not certification. Yes, certification is important, and getting 10 and 15 subjects is important, but we need to teach life skills, and we also need to critically teach our citizens to value themselves, to be confident in themselves, to be confident in who we are as a people, to ensure that in the complex world that we live in, that they can speak up, be counted, and let people know that they stand for what is a Grenadian civilization. And that is critical in my mind if we are going to counteract some of the challenges that we will face in the world, given that we live in a age of global information transfer. You know, so those are some of the issues we need to address within the education system, not just the formal education system, but we can go on. You know, how do we value our teachers? I think we saw what happened with the whole issue of the 4%. You know, and in my view, terribly wrong this issue was handled. Our teachers don't just help our students to be certified. They spend a significant portion of their time with them. And so our teachers help to form the character of our students, and by extension, the character of our nation. And so we need to recognize that. And it's not just monetary contributions. It's not just how much we pay our teachers, but how much we value and appreciate them. And so an NDC administration will ensure that is reflected in how we treat with, speak to, and discuss the changes that we need desperately to happen within our education system.
Well, thank you very much for that. You know, and you know, we talk about education, and it really is about the application of knowledge. It's about being able to function using the knowledge that you have gained wherever you've gotten it to better your life. And so we have another question from Natalie in Sunrise, Florida. Her question: what are your plans to address the increasing interest of Chinese and other foreign interests in the social, economic, and political affairs of Grenada?
Natalie, thank you for the question. I think I can start off by saying that Grenada has always been an open society. Obviously, we were colonized by the British. We gained our independence. We had the intervention or invasion by the United States in 1983. We were occupied. We had a peacekeeping force here for certainly up until 1985 when we had elections. And we've always been people that welcomes everyone. Grenadians migrate quite a lot, hence the reason for an extensive diaspora. And so we have to recognize that we are small and we're vulnerable. And so you would always have various global powers, partly because of our close proximity to the US, having an interest in Grenada and having an interest in the wider region. I think for us, what is important is that as Grenadians, we need to know what it is we want out of that relationship. I think our history has taught us that we do not need to fight the fight of the global powers. We do not need to get involved in the elephants fighting, because you know what happens as the ants, you're the one who's going to get trampled. So I think what has to happen is that we need to pursue, in my view, a non-aligned approach to foreign relations. We need to pursue an approach that says we're friends of all, enemies of none, and we need to essentially not meddle in the affairs of others.
Yep.
And we need to ensure that whatever relationship that we enter into and that we continue to promote amongst nations is one that is in the best interest of Grenada. And so that means putting Grenada first.
Yes.
And that is the approach that we will take. We need to ensure that whatever action we take, whatever foreign policy, whoever comes to invest in Grenada, that in fact we ensure that the investment deal is a deal that's in the best interest of Grenada. And I will say this because that requires us as a nation to invest in persons who can negotiate, persons who want to negotiate, persons who recognize that you need to be able to sit with persons, talk, discuss, mediate the best deal for Grenada. Too often, I think our government takes the approach of thinking because you're in power, that you can do as you please. And the consequence of that is that the taxpayers and the citizens of Grenada have been left in many cases withholding judgments against the people and state of Grenada for millions and millions of dollars, which we're still paying for. So I think it's absolutely crucial that when we engage in any sort of investment deals with whether it's foreign entities, whether state or private, that if we get to the point that there are issues or disputes arising over those matters, that we're able to sit down and negotiate. And if that fails, that we defend Grenada's position as robustly as possible. Because I'm aware, in fact, that there have been serious instances where Grenada's position was just not defended, where judgments and so on were entered against the state of Grenada because it was not defended. And that, frankly, is criminal. You know, so we need to ensure that we put the business of Grenada first. We need to ensure that we put the citizens of Grenada first in all our dealings with any foreign entity or foreign power. But I will repeat, our history has taught us that we should not get involved in the fights or the squabbles of the elephants, and we should really seek to protect ourselves, and I said to be friends of all and enemies of none. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And we have another question. They're coming fast and furious.
Yes.
Deborah in New York, New Jersey. What is your party's idea for building resilient communities in Grenada?
Right. Deborah, thank you. That really is a topical and current issue, and I'm grateful for the question. I want to talk perhaps first about energy use as well as climate change and our behavior on that. We need to recognize that the planet may not go anywhere, and with the ravages of climate change, it is mankind that is going to be impacted negatively by this. And so we have to begin the process of educating our population to realize that our behavior has a direct impact on our sustainability and our survivability and the resilience of our communities. And so I want to talk, for example, about the fact that we are constructing in low-lying areas. We are constructing in areas that are prone to flood. When we do that, it essentially is guaranteeing that these will not be resilient communities. And so we have to be able to man up and to be firm that from a land use point of view and from a policy point of view, we cannot keep encouraging building in areas where we know it is likely to flood or where we know the sea is likely to come in, because you would be essentially wasting and squandering millions and millions of resources, right? It's a hard cultural change to accept, but it's a change that we must accept because the sea or the river or the flooding isn't going to change course, right? We're the ones who are going to have to be required to change course. So we really have to engage in a holistic look at our land use policy to ensure that we start addressing some of those issues. That's one. Two, our waste management system is something we need to particularly pay attention to. We've taken baby steps in terms of, for example, banning the use of plastic bags, single-use plastic bags. But we have to appreciate, for example, that the use of plastic bottles is widespread. You know, and again, these require open and frank discussions because it has economic implications. But those are some of the issues that we need to address. You know, our waste management system, the level of plastic that we use in our communities, the level of waste that we use in our communities, recycling. You know, I was in Carriacou earlier this weekend, I was happy to see that in Carriacou you have garbage disposal bins that are clearly now identifying plastic use, compost use, recyclable use. Little things like that we need to be able to start within our schools, within our villages, to ensure that we engage upon that. Critically, we need to, in a very serious and targeted way, start reducing our use of hydrocarbons, right? And we need to promote the use of renewable energies, not just stock it, but actually ensure that our policies reflect that, right? Because it will immediately clean up our environment. I think we can talk about how nice and clean the air felt when we had these massive periods of lockdowns as a result of COVID-19. But I think we can't have a virus forcing us to breathe clean air. What we really need to do is begin a policy direction that will allow us to start building resilient communities. And it involves everything from the amount of vehicles on our roads to the question of how much renewable and solar energy and wind energy we use. And so even from a land building and building of properties point of view, we need to start have planning legislation, for example, that will mandate, for example, that we start going green with our energy consumption. We need to have planning laws that mandate that water storage capacity, tanks, cisterns. We can learn from our friends in Carriacou and PT Martinique. The use of cisterns so that we have our own water storage becomes more and more important, because we have to recognize we live in a hurricane belt. Hurricanes are a threat every year, right? So we need our citizens to understand, therefore, if you're building a new house, not only must you build a standard that is hurricane resistant, but you need to put yourself in a position where for the month or the 2 months after the hurricane, when you have no water supply, for example, that in fact you have your own water. And the best way to do that is to ensure that you construct your house with a tank. You know, so those are some of the simple things we could do to start making ourselves more resilient in terms of some of the macro issues. But you know, we have a lot of work to do in that area, a lot of education to do in that area. And then finally, we need to, given that we as small islands did not really create the challenges of climate change, we need to ensure that we advocate collectively to hold the wealthier and larger nations responsible, and to ensure that they do the right thing in terms of reducing the use of hydrocarbons and in terms of investing in renewable technologies.
Well, thank you very much. And at this juncture, we'll take a quick break and we will be right back with you. Continue to send those little dollars in, brothers and sisters. Send them in. And we are over to Master Control. See you shortly.
In due time, the polls will open and democracy will call on us to make a choice.
A choice between prosperity and false promises.
We all desperately crave change and progress, but progress favors the prepared.
What does it mean to be prepared?
It means to get registered.
Voting is your right, but you can only take part in the process if you are registered.
Registration is the first individual move you have to take if you want to contribute to the collective effort of national transformation.
Registration is how you can ensure your voice is heard.
Registration is a step in the right direction to bring benefits to all people.
To experience meaningful change.
Registration and voting is the only way to actualize our vision.
Our vision of more jobs and opportunities.
Our vision of better health and a robust agricultural sector.
Our vision of prosperity and nation building.
The ink we must use to rewrite our destiny.
To start a new chapter in our nation's history.
Is in the voters' booth.
And only the registered.
And only the registered.
And only the registered have access.
Change begins with registration.
Get registered today.
To get registered, visit your parliamentary electoral office in your constituency. For assistance with registration, call 435-1817 or visit our website at www.bringthevote.com. Well, folks, we are back with you, and let me tell you, you all are overwhelming us with these questions, man. They're coming in fast and furious. Now, time will not permit us to be able to answer all of them this evening, but we are taking note so that when we are doing a donate to, we'll get to answer some of them there. But of course, we, over the next few weeks and months, we will be engaging with you all the time, so we will be, referring to the and answering them for you. Before we continue with Dennis in Atlanta, let me just remind you, ndcgrenada.org/fundraiser on this platform, and you can send payments using PayPal or using your credit card. Made payment NDC New York chapter, mail to 0703 Brooklyn, New York 11225. And checks in Grenada can be made payable to NDC and box 1109 Grand Anse, St. George. So please remember that. And we go back to the prompter and we have Dennis. Dennis, thank you for your question. Dennis is in Atlanta, Georgia. So he asks, economic growth must be inclusive to provide sustainable jobs and promote equality. How would an NDC government achieve these objectives?
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. An NDC government will achieve these objectives by ensuring that the economic sectors that we drive and encourage for economic growth, in fact, encapsulate the vast majority of Grenadians. And that is why we think the productive sector is really the areas that we need to concentrate on. We have the traditional sectors that are productive, like agriculture, agro-processing, which we feel have not been given sufficient attention over the last 2 decades. We have fishing, we have the marine sector, boating, yachting, the tourism sector. And we go back to the creative economy, we go back to the digital economy. Grenada, I would put it this way, mainland Grenada, including Piti Matic and Carriacou, is not more than 110,000 people. And if you factor in the size of our public service as well, and you recognize then that if we encourage growth within the productive sectors that I've just talked about, then we would be in a position to ensure that we have inclusive growth that is sustained and that benefits all citizens of Grenada.
Yeah, thank you very much. Indeed, I'm sure, Dennis, that you are happy with that answer. We move on to Sam in London. In what ways do you envisage the elderly can help to strengthen economic growth and development?
Well, that's a very interesting question, Sam. Thank you for that question. Well, the first thing we need to ensure in Grenada is that our elderly are not actually plunged into poverty. We have a challenge in Grenada where, public servants, you may be aware, Sam has been clamoring to ensure that they are paid adequate pensions on retirement. But it's not just public servants who have to address the question of pensions, it's all of the working class of Grenada. And so social security from a pension point of view, social security reform is something we need to address directly in Grenada. So that's the starting point. We need to ensure that we build a society that doesn't in fact plunge our elderly into poverty. But crucially, many of our elderly are in fact successful. Many of our elderly are in fact wealthy. And so we can certainly learn from their examples in terms of what made them wealthy, what made them successful, so that they can pass on their stories to the next generation so that we can learn from them. And then thirdly, I think our elderly can in fact help us to invest. and we go back to questions like the use of our pension funds and what do we invest in. So that is crucial as part of our economic development going forward. We really do need to use our pension funds, our social security funds, to invest in creating more employment, so that in fact we can maintain and sustain our elderly. But for our elderly who are wealthy, who are well off, we certainly need to learn from them in terms of having the knowledge transfer, and we certainly need to encourage them, if they can, to share their experiences, to share their wealth with the next generation of Grenadians, so that they could in fact aspire to be like those members of our elderly class that are wealthy.
Yep. And thank you very much. I know that you are passionate about the elderly, and the other thing is that, Dickon, as we look, once we strengthen our health systems, it helps the elderly big time. Absolutely. It impacts their pockets, positively, because we know what happens. And the price of medication and all of that. And if we really boost up that health system, we may be able to subsidize that and cause them not to be worried so much. Here's another question from New York. What is your position on the value of Caribbean integration? Are you satisfied with the accomplishments of the OECS and CARICOM?
Yes. I will take the second part of the question first, and in simple, straightforward terms, no, I am not satisfied with the level of integration within the OECS and certainly at CARICOM level. In many respects, we've really regressed. There's no other way to look at it. And we could just talk about the lack of transportation and the lack of air travel within the OECS and within the wider CARICOM. I mean, it's honestly shameful. Our foreparents did a far better job than we have done in recent times. I mean, you have it's almost non-existent. So we really need to relook the lack of integration. We really need to ask ourselves, why is that happening? And is it because of insularity, short-sightedness? Do we genuinely believe that as small pockets of people within the Caribbean, that we can on our own continue to navigate the significant challenges we face as nations? When you look at the things that we've been successful at and the things that has brought us stability, if we take the OECS, for example, we've got a single currency. We got the same judicial system. We've got the OECS Secretariat desk. We've been able to pull our resources in some instances when it comes to healthcare in terms of bulk purchasing of pharmaceuticals and so on. So it begs the question, if these are obvious examples of how we've been successful, why are we not pushing for more of it rather than less of it? And again, it goes back perhaps to the fact that our political system is so entrenched where we encourage insularity and parochialism, that we need perhaps a generation change within the OECS politically to ensure that we can continue to foster economic integration, social and people integration amongst the OECS and CARICOM. And so unquestionably, it's been disappointing, the slow pace, but nation building is not instant coffee. Sometimes you start, you stop, and you have to start again. And certainly, as a citizen of the OECS and as a citizen of CARICOM, I certainly intend to champion and advocate for closer integration amongst the region, and not just talk about it, but to ensure that we begin putting policy and infrastructure in place that will encourage that. Because if we are not traveling amongst the region, if we are not getting to know one another, it becomes far easier for us to turn our eyes and turn our backs on one another and to put us in a position where we weaken rather than strengthen ourselves. And there are countless examples that I can give. Let's take our security forces, our police forces, for example. There's nothing preventing us from having a regional police machinery, so that it allows for persons to work within the police force regionally throughout the regions, rather than just in Grenada. The same way we have a single Chief Justice for the OECS, we could have a single Commissioner of Police for the OECS. We can have a single police force and regional security system for the OECS, which in my view allows for a more merit-based system of security, and for greater transfer of skills and knowledge, and for less nepotism. Because if you're from Grenada, for example, and you're working in Antigua or St. Vincent and so on, then you don't have to worry that it's perhaps your family and that sort of thing. So I think there are examples of that we can explore and pursue, and sport is another obvious example that we can look at. So certainly I think it's been disappointing over the last 2 decades, and we need to really reignite the flame of OECS integration.
Well, interestingly, that question came forward, and I'm a Federation baby, right? Because my parents met My father is Grenadian, my mother is Trinidadian, and they met when he went to federal, and she was working with the federal government, and so they met and got married, and here I am, the Federation baby. And I mean, we really have regressed from 1961 going right back. And to think that we have a university that encompasses all of us, and here it is, all this insularity is taking place. So it's really unfortunate, and it needs to be fixed. So I'm glad that your eye is on that ball. We have another question, New York again. What specifically would you and an NDC administration do to upgrade infrastructure and services in the delivery of healthcare, education, and the skills training in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique?
All right, New York, thank you for that question. And I will start with Petite Martinique first. As I said, I just came from Carriacou and Petite Martinique earlier in the week. And Petite Martinique is lacking basic infrastructure needed for a civilized island. And it's shameful. The jetty that the public uses, and I'm saying the public, the citizens of Petite Martinique and Carriacou, is completely falling apart. That's unacceptable. The healthcare center is leaking. And these are not complex issues to fix. That is completely unacceptable. The citizens of Petite Martinique have pointed out to me that the dentist only comes to extract teeth. They lack basic equipment for cleaning. And that's shameful. I want to shout out the Canadian Diaspora because in 2019 and I think in 2018, a group of Grenadians and other OECS and CARICOM citizens, part of the Canadian Diaspora, came to Grenada during the summer and devoted their time, their effort, their resources to providing free dental care and dental treatment to the citizens of Grenada in Guelph in 2018 and then to St. David in 2019. And it really was an eye-opener for me because it demonstrated, for example, how much help we need in our oral and dental health care. And I point these things out, going back to Petite Martinique, because this is basic infrastructure that simply requires, frankly, a budgetary allocation and the execution of it. Right. And I'm saying the National Democratic Congress and the citizens of Petite Martinique and Carriacou, and we will certainly advocate on their behalf, deserve better. Right. And so it's our job, even now, before we get into office, to start advocating for and on their behalf when it comes to those issues. If we take Carriacou, for instance, you've got the Princess, you've got the hospital in Carriacou. Again, you have basic challenges where the hospital is not functioning at the level it has to function, and it's compounded by the fact that you do not have regular travel between Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. And so we've had our citizens in Carriacou, unfortunately, die because they could not get efficient transportation to travel between Petite Martinique and Carriacou. So we absolutely have to ensure that we are able to invest in the basic infrastructural needs of our citizens. I highlighted Petite Martinique and Carriacou because to me they are obvious low-hanging issues that we can address. You can't have a situation where our citizens of Carriacou have to charter a private boat or charter a private plane to fly between Carriacou and Grenada to deal with their loved ones. That is simply not acceptable. So an NDC administration will ensure that we put the resources in place to ensure that basic infrastructure is available in Petite Martinique, in Carriacou, to address healthcare in particular. The same thing applies to skills training in Carriacou and Petite Martinique. You are at a marked disadvantage if you have to move from Carriacou to Grenada to learn carpentry, to learn masonry, to learn air conditioned refrigeration, any of those kinds of things. So we need to ensure that those services are available in at least in Carriacou. Right, so that the citizens of Petite Martinique and Carriacou can help. But crucially, we have the opportunity to make Carriacou and Petite Martinique the hub of the Grenadines. If we invest in those issues so that all of the surrounding islands and the citizens of the surrounding islands can come to Carriacou and Petite Martinique and create the kind of educational center that you could convert Petite Martinique and Carriacou in. And crucially, we have to exploit and develop the things that Carriacou and Petite Martinique, I think, have a competitive advantage in. Boat building, fishing, renewable energy. Petite Martinique could clearly be a small island that is run completely on renewable energy. So those are some of the things we intend to promote and address in a very direct and specific way in terms of Petite Martinique and Carriacou. I will just give one example in terms of Grenada when we talk about skills and education. I've been on record and I've indicated that we will establish on a parish basis a skills training center in each parish in Grenada. This is not novel because when I was 4 or 5 years old, literally 2 houses from where I lived on the corner was the Skills Training Center.
Yeah.
The property had belonged to the Anglican Church and had been given to the government of Grenada to specifically teach skills training. And people learned auto mechanic repair, sewing, carpentry, mason work, all of it. The building has virtually disappeared.
Yeah.
And there are many instances of that. The land is still there, and I'm sure the Anglican Church would probably be happy to donate the land to the people of Grenada again if you were going to rebuild back a skills training center. And we take those things for granted.
Yeah.
But as I said, the 50 or 60 of us who graduate from a class in high school, it's only 10 of us who are going to become professionals. It's only 10 of us who may have the opportunity to migrate and go into the diaspora. What happens to the other 40 of us?
Yeah.
What is the skill set that we are learning? How are we getting ready for the place of work? How are we getting ready to take care of ourselves? Some may go into a government job, some may get a job in an insurance or a bank. But what happens to the rest of us? We need to be prepared to ensure that we don't descend into poverty. And those are some of the basic things that we can address. And crucially, we can find out what is required in the labor market.
Yeah.
It's a small place. We can do the surveys. We can do the data mining to say Grenada will need, for example, 50 or 60 welders in the next 4 to 5 years based on the construction activity or the construction levels or the planned hotels or the planned what have you, right? And work back from that. We can say, for example, if the average age of our fishermen are 50 or 60, then we should know that in 10 or 15 years, we will need to be able to replenish, and therefore we need to be able to train our fishermen. Those things, to me, don't seem that complex. It doesn't seem to be rocket science. And huge countries do that, model that, because you need to be able to ensure that your labor force can in fact match what is required in the labor market. And so I want to thank New York for the question. I might have gone on a bit,
That's all right.
but I think it's important, and I'm passionate about that because I really do feel we've let ourselves down by not paying attention to some of those issues.
Thank you very much. I mean, you're right on point. And so we have Cynthia Purcell Fraser from Georgia. The high level of unemployment and underemployment among the youthful population is a cause for major concern. Many are feeling hopeless after being bamboozled with false promises. My question is, what are some of the measures you are planning to implement in order to alleviate the feeling of hopelessness among young people?
Right. Cynthia, thank you for the question. I want to start now with some of the things the National Democratic Congress is already championing. We need to, right now, encourage your young people to start thinking about alternative means of employment. And I'm saying alternative as in not the traditional means. And I therefore want to stress the digital economy. I was speaking to one of the members of the youth arm of the National Democratic Congress on Saturday, and we were discussing a program where we are going to seek to get 5 persons from each constituency, youth, to embark, so that will essentially get us to 50, so 75 persons, to embark upon a course so that they can learn programming and coding.
Yep.
The plan is essentially to write up a proposal that we can take to sponsors, to well-wishers, and to persons who are prepared to help.
Yeah.
The cost of the program is essentially $2,000.
Right.
So if you do 2,000 by 15, then you know what we need, right? And essentially, the plan there is to get these young people to do coding, to do programming, because we are satisfied that just from learning that skill set, they will put themselves in a position where they could begin to earn sustained income, and in many instances far higher than many of the traditional jobs in Grenada, almost immediately. The question is, why are we not talking publicly about those opportunities and those jobs and the alternative forms of employment that are available? We need to bring those things to the attention of our young persons. We need to educate them about them, and we need to train them so that they could understand that it puts you in a position where you become a global worker. Because when you're doing coding and programming, it is not for Grenada, it is for the globe, right? And so you recognize that you become a citizen of the world because you develop a skill set that allows you to work. You may stay in Grenada if you wish, but it allows you to work from almost anywhere in the world. I met a gentleman from South Africa who came into my office and he said, well, essentially he's a programmer. He bought a boat and he literally lives on the boat and he sails around the world. So I said, so where do you work? He's like, I work on my boat. And I'm like, what do you do? He's like, I'm a programmer. And he says, but the bulk of my money, for example, is paid in the US. And I like Grenada, and I'm thinking about settling here, and he wanted some tax advice as to whether he'd be taxed in the US and so on. Now, I was fascinated by this story because it truly tells you that with the appropriate skill set, you really do become a citizen of the globe. And Grenada is a wonderful place to live in. And so you can work almost anywhere in the world, but be stationed in Grenada once you have the appropriate skill set. So the hope and the message to our youth is just that. With the right education, with the right skill set, you become a global player. Educated in Grenada, you may choose to live in Grenada or not, but the point is you are competing on a global level and you will succeed. And your remuneration, your benefits will reflect the fact that you're a global citizen. And that is the kind of hope we need to bring to our young people. That is the kind of energy and hope and enthusiasm we need to say to them, that with the right skill set, with the right training, which we will deliver to you, you truly will be successful in Grenada and anywhere else that you wish to work.
And that is fantastic, because we are investing in our young people. We are giving them that fishing rod. You know, we're not giving them a fish. And so, brothers and sisters, we have come to the last question that we can take at this juncture. And it comes from Callan, from London, in the United Kingdom. I bring you warm and fraternal greetings from the United Kingdom, home of many Grenadians yearning for a positive change to our beloved homeland. We in the UK recognize the youths in Grenada were woefully misled with false promises. Today, they are forgotten and there is no hope. Under your leadership, what can the youths of Grenada expect in the short, medium, and the long term? This also relates to youths in the diaspora who want to contribute to the progressive development of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. As political leader, what are your final thoughts about the mission of the NDC and how your party is going to build a better Tri-Island state?
All right. Thank you for the question. I think I want to start by emphasizing that the diaspora and the youth in the diaspora are critical to Grenada as well. And so when I speak here, it is not just to inspire hope in Grenadians and young people in Grenada, but also young people in the diaspora, young people in the Caribbean. Because our islands, our civilization belongs to us. And I think if we read our history, we would recognize that oftentimes it is young people that drives change and transformation. And so we need to encourage our young people to become active in public life, to become active in social life, because oftentimes you are the ones who will drive the change that our society so desperately need. So under the National Democratic Congress and under my leadership, I certainly intend to champion the involvement of young people in all aspects of our lives. And I intend to advocate and champion on their behalf, because the future belongs to them. And I've been on record as saying that the future starts now. And if we don't begin the process of change now, we will lose that future. And we certainly do not want that. And so, you know, for the members of the diaspora who are listening to me, part of the reason for us having this and asking for donations, asking for contributions, is really for us to show to the next generation of Grenadians that we care about them, that we want to embark upon the change that will enhance their lives, that will improve their lives, that will give them the sense of hope that they so desperately need to know that your station in life is not poverty, that your station in life is not dependency, that you truly, rightfully belong to the world. You deserve to be treated with respect. You deserve to be encouraged. You deserve to be helped, so that you could blossom into the full potential that all of us as citizens of Grenada deserve. So to the members of the diaspora, I certainly want to encourage you to continue donating and championing the cause of the National Democratic Congress. We will be having more fundraisers. The hope is that we can get sufficient members, both in the diaspora and in Grenada, to fund the National Democratic Congress as part of this grassroots movement on a continuous basis, as I said, not just around election times, because we want to put the party in a position where we can continue the sort of initiatives that I talked about, where we can find 75 youth and train them in coding or programming, so that they can go on to live sustained and meaningful lives, and so in turn they can help other members of the society and talk about their experiences and talk about the fact that it was the National Democratic Congress that gave them the opportunity and the chance, so that we can replicate this throughout our communities. It may be coding, it may be in sport, it may be in football, you know, whatever foundations that we can use. You know, in the diaspora, there are a lot of charitable organizations that may be prepared to help donate and help persons, whether it's in the medical field, whether it's in the sporting field, whether it's in the education field. And we want our members of the diaspora to remember that as well. It is not just financial. There are a lot of citizens of Grenada who are talented, but because of lack of resources may not get the opportunity to pursue a higher education or to pursue a sports scholarship or any particular field of endeavor. And we would certainly want you to keep that in mind. And when you come across those kinds of foundations or charitable trusts, to refer them to the National Democratic Congress so that we can identify Grenadian youth who would benefit from that.
Well, thank you very much, PL. And let me say on behalf of all of us and those in the diaspora, it was really wonderful having you with us this evening. And let me shake your hand. I mean, I think, you know,
it's a pleasure.
You've been doing a brilliant job so far. Thank you very much. And so before we go, brothers and sisters, we want to remind you to donate funds. Go to the ndcgrenada.org/fundraiser. On this platform, you can send payments using PayPal or using your credit card. Checks in the USA can be made payable to NDC New York chapter, and you can mail them to P.O. Box 250703, Brooklyn, New York 11225. Checks in Grenada can be made payable to NDC and mailed to P.O. Box 1109, Grandin, St. George. So, to all of you who have been with us for the past, hour and three-quarter, we want to say thank you very much to our technical team. Thank you very much. To Ricky, who started off the program, thank you very much. And to all of you, brothers and sisters, especially in the diaspora, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for making it happen. Have a blessed one and see you soon. Merry Christmas.
Situation is so complex, who can understand people? Alright. And everyday people expressing different interpretations. Let us analyze just a little more. Our inner thoughts more deeply explore. Personal feelings away, be more objective, I say. Even if it's hard, we still have to try. We have to recognize the conditions that brought us so, then determine which way we want to go. Because the same stick that beat the black dog is the same.
Oh yeah, that was engagement there with the political leader of the National Democratic Congress, Mr. Dickon Mitchell. Listen, time does fly when you're having fun, and he definitely answered all the questions, and there still, we know you have a lot more questions, so there will be more, definitely, there will be more interactions with Mr. Dickon Mitchell, where you definitely will be able to answer, to ask questions. So as the song says, Grenada still belongs to we. Doesn't matter what your thoughts, what your opinion, know that that little 133 square miles of sand and sea and lush vegetation belongs to you and me.
Compensate for our nation's independence. Our road is long and our work is hard, but our united strength is our greatest reward. as we strive to build a nation. Do not forget, people. Alright. There were times when we all were proud and times that we all regret.
If this is the first time on Rampoon Radio, remember to check out www.rampoonradio.com, Rampoon Radio live on Facebook and on YouTube. We are there 24/7. We also, you can get us anywhere in the world. Yes, just download the Odyssey app, AUDACY. Download the Odyssey app and look for Rampoon Radio. We are there among the thousands of radio stations there as well. So our flag is being flown all over. You know, that is your Grenada, my Grenada, yeah. And I know you are proud because we are the gem, the spice island of the Caribbean. So, did you, hold on, let me pull up so I can get the comments. Okay, let me do that so I can see your comments, you know, your response, you know what I mean? How it was for you today with Mr. Mitchell, you know, I see people clapping hands and things, you know. I see the comments, I see Monica must there, you know. Monica have a big day coming up this week. Sherman, Behari, big up yourself. Grayson Taylor, big up yourself. Paul, Lydia, big up all yourself. Monica, yeah, Monica have a birthday coming up this week. So, Joan Batiste, big up yourself. Judy, big up yourself. Veronica Sandy, you know, all the folks on different platforms, because you know, we are all over the place. You know what I mean? Rampoon Radio, just keep it there. You know, keep it there. And subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like and follow the Facebook page. And just let me tell you that this is what all of us need right here.
Love is the only way to brighten your day. Don't throw it away.
Tell them, brother.
But love, some of us use to spite and abuse. It has me confused. Hey, hey, hey. We living in a temple, you must agree.
So for the folks who may have missed part of the engagement, I will post it to our YouTube channel. It's there, and I'll post the engagement on the YouTube channel so you can get it there as well. All right?
Society, I'm sure you'll agree with me. You will agree with me. You will agree with me. Love is the man who could understand. And hear the cry of his brother man. The man who would lend a hand when it's day. To help the weaker ones to proceed. But some of us using love like a shield. And robbing the poor chance to succeed. You pop off your face when you have the sun. That's clear indication you have no love. You prefer to sit and gossip about me. And some kind of mystery with your family. Bring back the old time loving so.
I just like to, I know I was not on the radio yesterday, a little news that I had to share with you. Remember Rampoon Radio, we shipped a 20-foot container of food and some other supplies to Grenada. I would just like to inform you that the container will be in Grenada tomorrow. All right. So I was informed by the shippers that the container will be there tomorrow. So you know the process. So it might take a couple days to get it off the port. All right. And once we get it off the port, we do have a location where we will be driving the container to offload it and then be able to distribute the goods for the people who need it. Now people have sent names into myself or Dexter in Grenada. If you still know people that need stuff, the people vulnerable who really needs it, let us know so that we can reach out and distribute this stuff to them. So the container, I was assured by the shippers that the container will be in Grenada tomorrow. So that's some good news, so that the folks will be getting their stuff for the Christmas season. All right. We have some toys. We have, healthcare products like Pampers and so for elders and young people who may need it as well. And also food, and clothes. We have clothes as well to be distributed. So the container will definitely be in Grenada. Well, the boat comes in on a Sunday, so the boat comes in today and it will be offloaded off the boat tomorrow. And then, we have already started the process. Letters were sent out to the different people to make sure that when the container come, we will be a little advanced. So now that we know the container will be in Grenada tomorrow, the food items, I tell you, and the different stuff we have will be distributed to the folks in need. And if you know someone, you can reach out to me, send me a WhatsApp. The numbers are there, 718-593-7692 or 302-353-2634, or just send me a message on Facebook. Send us, or Dexter Mitchell, Made in Grenada. You can send a message to that page as well, so we can get this stuff out. We have folks ready and willing to help with the distribution of the items. I'm so happy that, to get the news. I got the news yesterday that the container will be in Grenada on Monday, which is tomorrow. Oh yeah, that's some good news. So it definitely was a good evening. I've been with you since 3 o'clock, and I hope you guys really did enjoy the engagement with Mr. Dickon Mitchell here, the new leader of the National Democratic Congress. And listen, Rampoon Radio is where our culture lives, and our culture is our way of life. Political, economical, social, cultural, spiritual, emotional, it doesn't matter. Our way of life, we highlight it here on Rampoon Radio. So if you have something you want us highlight on Rampoon Radio, you can always reach out to us, and we will make sure we get it highlighted. That's what we do. That's what we do here. That's what we do here. Love. We spread the love and we share it to each other. Thank you guys so very much for spending this time with us today, and see you soon.
Shall know who serious but struggle, like those who show they could rise from the rubble of devastation with patriotism and dedication for our reconstruction. Oh, Grenada, land of my birth, the way you suffered
You know, I had to say something before I go. Earlier on this week, it was Thursday, was my good buddy, Kennedy Twit Phillip. Everybody know Twit from Bernie's Partyland. Was his birthday. Olia just help me wish Twit a happy belated birthday. All God's blessings to you, Twit, and we hope that you live to see many, many more prosperous, happy birthdays, all right? So, Twit, big up yourself, and we wish you continuous blessings, yeah? Continuous blessings, and we wish you live to see many, 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 many more happy birthdays. And you know what? I'll just do I'll do an extra few minutes of Twit, you know. Yeah, man, Twit birthday, I forget my good partner birthday. I can't do Twit that. And Monica's birthday will be here soon, you know what I mean? Monica's birthday will be here on Friday. So all you know, celebration don't start. But for Twit, we want to wish you a happy belated birthday. Big up yourself, Miss Judy. Hey, Jamie, big up all yourself. AP, big up all yourself. Lester, the whole crew, big up all yourself. All right, let me play a song. Twit, I play a song for you, boy. Twit, you wanna dance? It's Sunday, 6 p.m. on a Sunday inside of the Eastern Standard Time Zone, 7 o'clock in Grenada. My name is Mr. Land. This is www.rampoonradio.com. We are here for you. Our culture definitely lives here. Olia, I want to know, hold on, before I even play that song, you're saying happy birthday to Twit? Yeah, happy. Yeah, man, tell Twit happy birthday. Twit is the boy, you know. Yes, you understand? Twit is the boy. And Twit, you know the container reaching the Grenada tomorrow. So all of that, we had to play something for Twit, man. Yeah, we must play something for Twit. And when it comes to Twit, Twit is a man, he moves smoothly, yeah? That's how that's called him. He has moved smoother. Yeah, and Twit is we real good body. And when I say real good body. You know, Twit, big up yourself every time. Continue to wish Twit happy birthday to you, Twit. Yeah? All God's blessings to you.
Many people asking me, Jamo, how you love music so? I tell them to ask me this question because I don't know. Mommy lyrics told me from ever since I'm a little boy. Music was the only thing could have kept me satisfied. I'm a music man. I know how to blend.
Judy Alexander, big up yourself.
The song sweet. I'm a music man. I don't know how to hit
Veronica Sandy,
science and technology.
Valerie Thomas.
Is me. I'm a music man. Music in me pants, music
in me Harris.
Music in me socks, music in me shoes.
Maria Rasha.
I'm a music man. My brother, my sister is music.
Oh yeah.
Children is music.
Definitely, Twit is a music man. And Twit, I know you're celebrating your birthday, and I want you to do it specially like this, Twit. I want you to do it with grace. I want you to do it gracefully. Aha.
I rather say my grace than to sit down and talk about race. And that is the proper way to say grace 3 times a day. And anything I'm doing, me and grace could never part. Even in love making, I'm making love with grace in my heart. And I'm kissing with grace. I'm squeezing with grace. I'm sleeping with grace. And I'm coming with grace. Right, I'm man with this. When I come in with grace. say grace morning, noon, and evening. And if I'm going on a chase, I must say grace to reach back safe. Until eternity, I just ask grace for protection. Listen carefully, how me and grace does be having fun. If I'm whining with grace. I jamming with grace. I doing with grace. And I screwing with grace. I am man with this. When I screwing with grace. I tell you. I want you to understand
that I am a born again Christian.
And if I want satisfaction, grace is my only solution.
So that's for my good buddy there, Twit, big up yourself, you know what I mean? Happy birthday to you. All God's blessing, folks. I'll see you guys later on. Big up all yourself each and every time. And remember, do not let anyone spoil your joy. You created it for yourself. Trust in the Master. Everything else will be added. When they come at you, it's because your good spirit hunts the demon in them. So they attack you. But leave them up to the Almighty and everything else will be added. Peace. Mr. Lion. I am OUT out.
And when I go in the garden, I just say grace before I go. And that is the reason I just reap everything that I sow. And I'm digging with grace. I'm raking with grace. I'm hoeing with grace. And I'm forking with grace. I am a man with taste. When I'm forking with grace.
Now start.
everybody planning for this Christmas season coming. I know everybody planning for this Christmas season we coming. Them boys up in Lupino, Maracas and Santo, they ready to start the show. Once you say the wood go, so come let me parang, come let me have fun, come let me parang all your know today is Christmas Day. Anything you want to eat, just say. You could eat it right up to the bowl. Boy, make yourself at home. A blacky, turkey, wild meat, lap and goatee, grapes, apples. Boy, come and sit round the table. Eat something before you go. 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 Oh Lord. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na.
That brown skin girl from Big Up East, I bring she her Christmas gift, but I cannot understand why she refills my big ham. Don't take it too personal, some people just want it all. Inspector, you very kind, but I'm speaking out my mind.
Who you giving all that?
I say, darling, don't worry.
Who you giving all that?
Christmas time you must happy.
Who you giving all that?
Not everybody does get.
Who you giving all that?
So may see Santa Claus. I give her, 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 I give her. Who you giving all that? 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 I took my time and wrap it up. I put roses on the top. Anything to impress she, I say handle carefully. Girl, I love our friendship. I'm a man and not so cheap, but she watching it so hard. Deep inside I feeling bad.
Who you giving all that?
I say, darling, don't worry.
Who you giving all that?
Christmas time you must happy.
Who you giving all that?
I'm busy, I want to go.
Who you giving all that?
What you thinking? Have you so? I give her, 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 I give her. What?
Who you giving all that?
Who you giving all that? Who you giving all that?
Who you giving all that? La 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 la. Who you giving all that? I say, darling, don't worry. Who you giving all that? Christmas time you must happy. Who you giving all that? Don't panic about the price. Who you giving all that? Don't tremble about the size. I give her, 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 I give her. Ham. Who you giving all that? 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 Last year I sent up 2 barrel for Jenny on Dabo Hill. When that woman done with me, my 2 bank book was empty. Sorted women smart and quick, some of them just choose and pick. But this one would not relate, I had to walk out from she gate. Who you giving all that? I say, darling, don't worry. Who you giving all that? Christmas time you must happy. Who you giving all that? Girl, don't mind it looks scary. Who you giving all that? Take the opportunity. I give her, 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 I give her. Whoops! Who you giving all that? Who you giving all that? Who you giving all that? Who you giving all that?
Specky, I'm hungry, but I ain't starving enough.
Darling, you don't have to behave like that. You don't have to behave. Christmas is receiving, not refusing. Next time, I go bring a smaller ham. Oh, 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 oh. Who you giving?
Not
Who
me.
you giving? Who you giving? Who you
not
giving?
me at all.
Who you giving? Who
Not
you
me.
giving? Who you giving?
You're bringing it from
Who
me.
you giving? Who you giving all that? 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 Who you giving? Who
Boy,
you
you better
giving?
carry that back.
Who you giving? Who you giving?
Bring it that
Who you
here.
giving? Who you
I'm telling
giving?
you, not here.
Who you
enough.
giving?
Don't
Who
even
you
try.
giving? Who you giving all that? 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 Who you giving?
Boy,
Who you
I'm
giving?
telling you again.
Who you
Carry
giving?
that back
Who you
where you
giving?
get it.
Who you giving?
Look,
Who you giving?
that thing too big.
Who
I
you
can't eat
giving?
all of that.
Who
What's
you
wrong with
giving?
you?
Who you giving all that? 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 Who you giving?
Like you ain't
Who you
hearing me
giving?
out.
Who you
But
giving?
why you so
Who you
stupid?
giving?
That
Who you
thing
giving?
too big
Who you
and
giving?
oversized.
Who you giving?
I
Who you
want it.
giving? Who you giving all that? Who you giving all that? Who you giving all that? Who you giving all that?
I went baranging by my neighbor.
some of them for sure. Oh, madam, which one is your favorite? Bring it out quick, let me taste it. It's you who make it and you must know. I want a good head before I go. She say hot plum, pomegranate, cashew, guava, balata, bandania, aloes, and cake. I want some homemade wine, Madam Gloria. Give me the homemade wine. It's nice. I want some homemade wine, Madam Gloria. Give me the homemade wine. It's sweet. Bum bum, ba-dum bum, ba-dum bum, ba-dum bum, ba-dum bum, ba-dum bum, ba-dum bum. She say, cocoa wine does give me short breaths, and sometimes it makes me upset. Maybe the seed that have it so strong, oh, I leave it in the jar too long. When come to wine, I have the recipe. You could go out there, ask anybody. Any function, any party. Them girls come running, 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 looking for me. They want cocoa, long mango, dandy roots, passion fruit, jimawi, strawberry, aloes, and cake. I want some homemade wine, Madam Gloria. Give me the homemade wine. It's nice. I want some homemade wine, Madam Gloria. Give me the homemade wine. It's sweet. Bum bum, bum bum bum, bum bum, bum bum bum, bum bum, bum bum bum, 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 b Ay, mira, chiquita, yo quiero tú mucho. Ven acá a bailar conmigo. Baila, mi amor, baila. Capitán. Santa sent to tell me spending Christmas with we. This year when he come down, he partying with Trini. He said to get all the bush rum ready and the wild meat too, and a room somewhere in Santa Cruz to relax when I take my booze. Oh yo, oh yo yo. Oh God, oh yo, oh yo yo. I want a bella boy, oh yo, oh yo yo. Me dashing and back around, oh yo, oh yo yo. And I want to play, oh yo, oh yo yo. Pack my suitcase already. I just waiting on a flight. So tell everybody I'm coming in Christmas night. I ain't coming on no reindeer. That take too much time. I can't wait to reach ya to hold somebody and wine. Oh yo, oh yo yo. I want a fella. Oh yo, oh yo yo. Me dancing and bacala. Oh yo, oh yo yo. Santa want to jam. Oh yo, oh yo yo. I check in Mrs. Time.